let's add these fractions. So when adding fractions, the first thing that you want to do is find the lowest common denominator. So the lowest common denominator between 4 and 8 is going to be 8. Why? Because if you multiply any number by 4 and any number by 8, the first number that will be common between the results of when you multiply numbers by 4 and 8 is going to be 8. All right, so the reason why, if you multiply 4 times 2, you get 8. If you multiply 8 times 1, you get 8. All right, so anything you multiply at the bottom, you have to multiply at the top. So if you multiply the bottom by 2, you have to multiply that top by 2. So your 2 times 6, that's 2 times 3, that's going to be 6. Plus, you multiply on the bottom by 1, you have to multiply the top by 1. So 1 times 5, that's going to be 5. After you add everything together, you'll have your answer to be 11 over 8. All right. Now, for this number 2 now, let's write the fraction. Well, the first thing that I'm going to do before I write anything out is that when I see the mixed numbers, I want to convert the mixed numbers into improper fractions. So how we do that, we multiply and then we add. So let me write it above right here so it looks a bit clearer. So all right, so in order to convert this mixed fraction into improper, we will just multiply and then add. So we multiply 4 times 5, and then we will add that to 2. Same thing right here, so 3 times 2, and then we add that to 1. If we do that, we'll get our new fractions being 4 times 5 is 20 plus 2, that's going to be 22. So get our new fractions to be 22 over 5 minus 3 times 2 is 6 plus 1, that's 7 over 2. All right, so now that we have that right there, we're just going to continue. So we need to have our lowest common denominator. So our common denominator now is going to be between 5 and 2, and that's going to be 10. Because if we multiply 5 by 2, you're going to get 10. And if we multiply 2 by 5, you're going to get 10. All right, so anything you multiply at the bottom, you have to multiply to the top. So you're going to multiply that 22 by 2. So that's going to give you 44 minus anything you multiply the bottom. So if you multiply this bottom by 5, so 2 times 5, you're going to have to multiply your 7 by 5 as well. 5 times 7 is going to be 35. So now that we have that, we will just subtract to get our final answer. So I'm going to write my final answer right here. So that's going to be 44 minus 35. So 44 minus 35, that's going to be equal to 9. So that's going to be 9 over 10. All right. We're dividing mixed fractions right here. So we're going to do the same thing to this fraction right here. So we're going to convert it into improper. So multiply and then add. So it's going to be 3 times 5, that's 15. Plus 1, that's going to be 16. Divided by 5, or 15 over 5. Divided by 1.5. So when we divide fractions, we end up multiplying fractions. because the sign will change. We change the sign to the opposite. So it's going to change the multiplication, but after we change the sign, we flip the second fraction. So we're going to end up with 16 over 5 multiplied by 2 over 1 because we flip the second fraction. So we flip the second fraction and the sign changes to the opposite. So we end up multiplying instead of dividing. When we multiply numerator times numerator and denominator times denominator. So that should be equal to 16 times 2. So if you multiply 16 times 2, that's going to be equal to 32. So that's 32 over 5 times 1. That's going to be 5. So we have our fraction being 32 over 5. And if we, so that's going to be your fraction right there. Moving on to question 4. So we end up multiplying two mixed fractions. So what you do is you just first convert these fractions. So that's going to be 3 and 1 over 8 times 2 and 2 over 3. So we're going to end up multiplying and then you add. Same thing right here, you multiply and then you add. So we're going to get our answer to be equal to, and that answer, we're just converting these mixed fractions into improper fractions. So that's going to be 3 times 8 plus 1. So 3 times 8 is 24 plus 1, that's going to be 25. So 25 over 8 times 2 times 3, that's going to be 6, plus 2, that's going to be 8. So 8 over 3. So we converted them into improper fractions, and after multiplying now, so we're going to multiply afterwards. If we're multiplying fractions, that's numerator times numerator and denominator times denominator. So that's going to be 25 times 8. So that's going to be 25 times 8 is going to be equal to 200. Over 8 times 3. So 8 times 3 is going to be equal to 24. For the marks right here, if you want to leave the answer as is, you can. But if you want to, you can also simplify your answer. You can also simplify. So if you simplify your answer, you can divide both the 200 and the 24 by a number to make it simpler. So for example, if you divide 200 by 4, so I don't that color is too near to red, so let's use a lighter color. So if we're simplifying this fraction right here, we can divide both the bottom and the top by 4. That will be equal to, if you're simplifying it, so 200 divided by 4 is going to be equal to 50 over, and 4 divided by 24 is going to be equal to 6. All right, we could probably simplify it some more, but to at this point right here, well, we can just simplify it again. I don't think anything is wrong with that. If you want, you can simplify it again, and if you simplify it again, you just divide both the bottom and the top by 2. That's if you want to simplify it again. So 2 divided by 50, that's gonna be 25. So that's gonna be 25 over 2 divided by 6, that's gonna be 3. So if you wanted to simplify it to this answer right here, that would be fine. So this would be your final answer. But if you had 200 over 24, I would mark it right. If you had 50 over 6, I would mark it right. Or if you had 25 over 3, I would mark it correct, because this question right here was not worth a lot of marks. So you don't have to do too much simplify it too much. All right, moving on to question 5 right here. So question 5 says we are using the order of operations. So the order of operations, you work what is in the bracket first. So you work what is in the bracket first. So bracket comes first. Then you work our exponents. And then we have multiplication and division coming afterwards. And then addition and subtraction comes last. So that's our order of operation. So the first thing that we work is the bracket. So we have to work that first. So we're gonna work what is in our brackets first. So that's gonna be 6 plus 2. All right, so 6 plus 2 is gonna be equal
to 8. So you're gonna have your 8. So 6 plus 2 is 8. And you multiply next, because multiply will come before addition or subtraction. So you're gonna have your 24. So let's write it all right there. So that's 24 minus 8 times 2. All right. And as I said before, you multiply before you subtract. All right. So we work this first. That's the 8 times 2. So 8 times 2, that's gonna be 16. So we'll have 20. So we'll have 24 minus 16, and that will be equal to your final answer of 24 minus 16. That should be equal to 8. All right.
and this is the same order of operation. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna highlight what I'm gonna do first. So here I'm gonna have to multiply first. I'm gonna have to multiply first. So let's put it inside right here. So I would have to multiply first my two fractions. After multiplying, I can add and then subtract. All right, so how do you multiply? You multiply across. So that's gonna be numerator times numerator and denominator times denominator. So that's gonna be end up being 2 times 3. That's gonna be 6 over 5 times 4. That's gonna be 20. And then we're gonna add that to a half. All right, so the lowest common denominator should be between 20 and 2. The lowest common denominator is going to be 20, because I'd have to multiply 2 times 10 to get 20, while I have to multiply 20 times 1 in order to get 20. All right, so anything I do to the bottom, I have to multiply to the top as well. So that's gonna be 1 times 6. That's gonna be 6, and I'm gonna multiply the 1 times 10. All right, so that's gonna be 1 times 6 is gonna be 6 plus, so 6 plus 1 times 10, that's gonna be 10. So that's gonna leave me with, so my answer is gonna be 16. Let's write it a little bit bigger. So that's gonna be 16 over 20. because if I add these two, I'm gonna get that 16 over 20. All right, but after I would have added the half, after I added a half to it, right? So after I added a half to it right there, so I multiplied first to get the 6 over 20. Then I add the half. That's what I did right there. So the only thing left that I have to do is to subtract the what? 1 over 6. That's the last thing that I have to do. Subtract the 1 over 6. So this right here. So this 16 over 20, I'm going to subtract 1 over 6 from it. So that's going to be minus 1 over 6. So that's gonna leave me with the same thing. We're gonna do the same thing. So find the lowest common denominator between 20 and 6. So that's gonna be all right. So 3 times 2 is gonna be 60. So that means that 6 times 10, that's gonna be 60. All right, so it's gonna be 60. So lowest common denominator is going to be 60. All right, because 6 times 10 is going to give me 60, and 20 times 3 is gonna give me 60. Anything I multiply at the bottom, I must multiply it at the top. So I'm gonna multiply 16 by 3 as well. And then I'm gonna multiply my 1 times my 10. All right. So that's gonna be 16 times 3. That's gonna be equal to 48. So that's 48 minus 1 times 10. That's gonna be 10. So if I subtract 10 from 48, I'm gonna be left with 38 out of 60. And if you have 38 out of 60, you would have already gotten your marks. But if you want to simplify, you can simplify your answer. So if I simplify, I'm just gonna divide both the number at the top and bottom by 2. All right, so if I simplify and divide both the number at the top and bottom by 2, I'm gonna get 38 divided by 2. So 38 divided by 2 is gonna be equal to 19. That's gonna be 19 over 60 divided by 2. That should be equal to 30. So that's gonna be your final answer, 19 over 30. So that's gonna be your answer right there. All right, so a village has 600 people, 20 are unemployed. Sorry, 20% are unemployed. So it asks us to find how many are unemployed and how many are employed. So what you're going to do is that you're just gonna find how many are unemployed. What is 20% of 600? So you're just gonna do that right now. So it's gonna look just like this. We're gonna find what is 20% of 600. So you can find how many are unemployed. So that's 600 times 20 over 100. All right. So we know that if we are multiplying a whole number by a fraction, put the whole number over 1, and then you multiply your two fractions. That's gonna be numerator times numerator and denominator times denominator. So that's gonna be equal to 2 times 6 is going to be 12. So 2 times 6 is 12. So you put your 12 and you put the zeros in both numbers. So that's going to be 3 zeros all over. 1 times 100, that's going to be 100. And then you cancel your zeros. So now we're just left with 120. So 20% are unemployed. That means that number of unemployed persons would be 120. So how many are employed? Well, if there are 600 persons, if there are 600 people, and 120 is unemployed, then we're going to have to subtract the 120 unemployed persons from the 600 people in order to know how many are left, because those persons would be employed, working persons. So 0 minus 0 is 0. 0 minus 2, can't, so you carry 1. So that's going to be 10. And after we take 1 from 6, we're left with 5. So that's going to be 2 from 10, that's going to be 8. 1 from 5, that's going to be 4. So unemployed person is going to be equal to 480. All right. A student scored 35 out of 70. Find the percentage score. So that's going to be 35 out of 70. This is a fraction. If we want to find the percentage, we multiply by 1,000. So we multiply by 1,000 if we want to know the percentage. Sorry, we multiply by 100, not 1,000, because percentage is out of 100. And we know that if we're multiplying a whole number by a fraction, we put the whole number over 1. So we can multiply numerator times numerator and denominator times denominator. So anytime you want to find the percentage when you have a fraction, if you have a fraction and you want to find what the percentage of this fraction is, you multiply the fraction by 100. All right. So just put it over 1 so we can have 2 fractions. So we just multiply. All right. So that's gonna be equal to. So 35 times 100 is gonna be 35. And you add the 2 zeros there. So that's gonna be 3,500 over 70 times 1. That's gonna be 70. All right, so you cancel your zeros first. So now we're left with 350 divided by 7, and that should be equal to. So 7 divided by 35, that's going to be equal to 5. So your answer is going to be equal to 50. Because 7 divided by 350 is going to be 35 goes 5 times, and you put your 0 back. So that's the reason why we have 50. So it's gonna be 50%. All right, moving on. A laptop costs $80,000 and depreciates at 5% per year. So if it depreciates by 5% per year, this is not gonna be simple depreciation. Because it depreciates at 5% per year. All right, so every year it's being depreciated by 5%. So we have to take take off 5% each year. Basically, that's what it's saying. All right. So yeah, let's find what the value is after 1 year. So that's gonna be $8,000 and it depreciates at 5% per year. So we can just multiply. So that's gonna be $8,000 times 5% is gonna be 5 over 100. So let me show you a trick to move faster. So you can just eliminate your zeros before multiplying. So if you take two zeros right here, you can eliminate zeros from the top and bottom before you multiply. All right. So now that we have done that, we can just multiply right across because we're still gonna apply the same concept where we convert this into a whole number into a fraction by putting it over one, and then we multiply across. So that's gonna be the 800 times 5, and we'll get our final the amount that we should subtract from the 80,000. All right. So that's gonna be 8 times 5 is gonna be 40. So 8 times 5 is gonna be 40. And there's just one zero afterwards. Sorry, there's two zeros afterwards. So that's gonna be 4,000. All right. So whether you didn't do it like this or you did it regularly, you should get the same $4,000. It's just a trick that I showed you, so you can choose which one you prefer. Doing. All right. So $4,000. This is not the amount. This is what you're gonna use to subtract. This is the depreciation amount. So you're gonna subtract that now from the $8,000 to determine the value after 1 year, because you can't expect a laptop to cost $80,000 and then by the end of the year it costs $4,000. That doesn't make any sense. So you have to subtract the depreciation amount from $80,000. So if you subtract, so 80,000 minus 4,000 is gonna be equal to 76,000. And that's the amount of dollars. That's the value after 1 year of depreciation. All right. So for year two, know that the device costs $76, $76,000. We're going to have to find 5% of that because it depreciates at 5% per year. So that's gonna be 5% of this. So it's gonna multiply it by. So that's gonna be the 76,000. We're just gonna multiply that by. That's gonna multiply that by 5%, which is gonna be 5 over 100. And as I showed you before, it doesn't matter which step you take, you will get your same answer. So whether you use the shortcut that I showed you or the one before, you'll get the same answer regardless. So if you multiply a whole number by a fraction, we put the whole number over one, so that we can multiply numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator. All right. So we can just multiply right across right there. But before we multiply again, as I told you, you can take off the zeros before, or cancel the zeros before you multiply. So 1 0, cancel 1 0, cancel another 0, cancel another 0. So you can cancel before you multiply, just to move faster and to make calculations easier on you. So afterwards, you multiply just the 760. So 760 times 5, and that's gonna be equal to $3,800. All right, and that's going to be not the amount you'll pay by the end of the year, but this is gonna be our depreciation amount. All right, so we have to just subtract that from our 6,000. So let's subtract this right here. So the 3,600, we can subtract it from, sorry, the 3,800, we can subtract it from the 76,000. So if we subtract that, we are going to get our final answer to be equal to, so 0 minus 0 is 0, 0 minus 0 is 0, 0 minus so 0 minus 8 you can't, so you're going to take 1, carry that 1, that's going to be 10 now. We take 1 from 6, you'll be left with 5. So 8 from 10, that's going to be 2, and 3 from 5, that's going to be 2, and you just bring down your 7 right there. So that's gonna be your final answer. So by the end of year 2, you have your final answer to be in dollars, $72,200, because every year it's being depreciated by 5%. All right. So moving on to question 11. So a loan of 24,000 is borrowed at a simple interest rate 8% per annum for 2 years. Calculate the simple interest. So simple interest is gonna be equal to principal times rate times time all over 100. So the money you borrowed is gonna be your principal, and the 8% is gonna be your rate, and your time is going to be 2 years. So that's gonna be, we plug in all our values. So we're gonna have 24,000 so 24,000 times 8 times 2 all over 100. All right. So if you multiply everything at the top right here, you're going to get, so 24 times 8 times 2 is going to be, so you just multiply the digits at the top. So that's going to give you 384. And if you realize I just multiplied the digits, so the 8 times the 2 times the 24. And after I do that, let's multiply the 24, the 8, and the 2. So after multiplying that, I will get my 384, and I just add my zeros. So add my 3 zeros. So that's 1, 2, 3, all over 100. So all I have to do now is just to cancel my zeros. So that's gonna be 1, 1. So take off 1, 2 zeros from the bottom and 2 zeros from the top. So we're left with our answer being in dollars. So that's gonna be 3,840. That's going to be your interest. That's gonna be your simple interest. 3,840. All right. So moving on below, we're asked to find compound interest. All right. So a savings account contains $50,000 and earns 10% compound interest per year. Find the amount in the account after 3 years. So that means we're asked to find the total amount. So that's gonna be this formula right here. So that's gonna be A. So that's gonna be A is equal to P times 1 plus R over 100 raised to the power of the time. All right, so that's gonna be A is equal to, just plug in all our values. So the amount that the original money is gonna be your P, principal. Your 10% is going to be your rate. Anytime you see the percentage, that's gonna be your rate. And time is going to be 3 years. So that's time. So that's gonna be 50,000 multiplied by 1 plus, so R is going to be 10. So that's 10 over 100 raised to the third power. All right. So we normally work what is in our bracket first. So we normally work what is in our bracket first, but because this is a fraction, I'm gonna convert this into a regular decimal number by just dividing. So I'm gonna have my A is equal to my 50,000 times 1 plus. So after dividing, I will get my answer to be 0.10. If you write 0.1, that's fine. That's also correct. All right, so that's gonna be the number raised to the third power. And now we're gonna work what is in our bracket. So that's 1 plus 0.10. All right, as I said before, I don't have to write that 0 right there. I don't have to write this 0. I just put it down so you can know that it is the 10 that was being divided, but I don't have to write that 0. So if you have 0.1, that's fine. All right, so let's just continue working below. So I'm gonna have A is equal to 50,000 times 1 plus 0.1, that's gonna be 1.1 raised to the power of 3. So because it's raised to the power of 3, it simply means that we're going to have A is equal to 50,000 multiplied by, so 1.1 raised to the third power, that's going to be 1.1 times 1.1 times 1.1. So we multiply the number by itself 3 times. And we're gonna multiply before we do anything in the bracket. So we're gonna multiply 1.1 by itself 3 times before we multiply it by the 50,000. All right. So 1.1 raised to the third power. You're gonna get this as your answer. So that's A is equal to 50,000 times, that's gonna be, after multiplying all of this, I'm gonna get this for my answer. 1.331. So that's gonna be my answer after I would have multiplied 1 times 1 by itself 3 times. And that's gonna be equal to, if I multiply it by the 50,000. So if I multiply it by the 50,000, I'm gonna get my total to be equal to, so 50,000 times 1.331 is gonna be equal to 66,550 dollars. That's gonna be my total amount. All right. Right here, it's asked to, right here asks us to simplify this ratio right here. So if you simplify the ratio, you look at it, and I'm gonna write it as a fraction first. So if I write this as a fraction, it's gonna look like as 24 over 36. So yes, we can write ratio as fraction. All right, so to write our ratio as fraction, we just did it right there. So the first digit is gonna be my numerator. First digit is gonna be my numerator. Second digit is gonna be my denominator. All right, so that's how we end up with this fraction right there. Now to simplify is just to divide. So we're gonna divide the number at the bottom and the top. Now to simplify, so we have to divide by the same number. So what's the highest number that can divide 24 and 36? Looking at this, I can see 12. So if I divide both the number at the bottom and the top by 12, I'm not seeing this color, so I'm going to change it. So if I divide both the number at the bottom and the number at the top by 12, I should be able to simplify. Because 12 divided by 24, that's going to be 2. So 12 divided by 24, that's going to be 2. Over 12 divided by 36, that's going to be 3. So this will be your final answer. 2 to 3. Okay, moving on. We have a ratio right here that we're going to share. So we're going to share. So the ratio of red, blue, and green marbles in a bag is 4 to 5 to 6. There are 60 marbles altogether. Find the number of marbles of each color. So this 4 right here is going to be the red. So this 4 is representing the red marble because it's always in the line right here. It's always in the correct order. So red, blue for 5, and 6 is going to be green. All right. So the first thing that you're supposed to do whenever you're asked to divide numbers by any ratio is that you want to add all the numbers in your ratio. So you're going to add, you're going to add 4 plus the 5 plus the 6. So when you add them together, you should get 11. Sorry, you should get, so that's 5 plus 4, that's 9. 9 plus 6, that's going to be 15. All right, so after adding 4 plus 5 plus 6, you're going to get your answer to be equal to 15. What this 15 represents is that your 60 marbles are going to be shared up into 15 equal groups. So 15 equal groups. So if it's going to be shared into 15 equal groups now, you have to know how much is going to be in each group. All right, so it's going to be shared into 15 equal groups. So that's the ratio. So now we need to know how many is going to be in each group. So each group will have so each group is going to have, you're going to divide your 60 by uh the total groups. So since you're gonna have 15 equal groups, so each group is going to have 60 divided by 15. So that's gonna help us to find our total group. So we're gonna divide 60 by 15. All right, so if we divide 60 by 15, that should be equal to 4. So that means that each group will have 4 marbles. So each group will have 4 marbles. So picture this now. There are 15 groups, and in each of the 15 groups, there are 4 marbles in each group. Right? So if each group is going to have 4 marbles and there are 15 groups, this person who takes, so the person who takes now 4 out of the 15 groups. So out of all the groups, out of all the 15 groups, we took 4. So that's gonna be equal to 4 times 4. And that's going to be equal to 16. So there are 16 marbles for this person. So this person has 16 marbles because he took 4 out of the 15 groups. All right. What about the person who took 5 out of the 15 groups? So that's going to be equal to 5, because he took 5 groups, and in each of the 5 groups there are 4 marbles. There are 4 marbles. So he's going to have, so 5 times 4 is going to be 20 marbles. And then lastly, we have the person who took, the person who took we have the person who took 6 out of the 15. So the person who took 6 out of the 15 groups is going to have the 6 groups multiplied by the 4 marbles, because 4 marbles are in each of the 6 groups. So that's going to equal to 24 marbles. All right. So that's going to be your answer right there. All right, going down. So a road measures 15 centimeters on a map drawn to scale 1 to 50,000. Calculate the actual length of the road in kilometers. So since the map is drawn in the unit centimeters, this right here is going to be this scale right here is being used is written using centimeters. So we need to know how many centimeters will give you a kilometer. So I'm gonna go to my good old prefix table. So my highest unit is going to be kilo, and then deca, and then we have hectare. Sorry, we have hectare before deca. So hectare, deca, base, deci, centi, and milli. All right. So every time when we go from one unit to the next, we increase in multiples of 10. We increase in multiples of 10. That means that from one unit to the next, that's 10. Then to the next 100, then to the next 1,000, then to the next 100,000, then to the next 10,000, then to the next. That's how we do it. So every time we increase from one unit to the next, we increase in multiples of 10. So how do we use the prefix table? Since we are going to, our lowest unit is centimeters. Since our lowest unit is centimeters, that's going to be my starting unit on the prefix table. And I want to go all the way up to my what? Kilometers. So I'm going to start right here. So from centi to deci, that's 10, then 100, then 1,000, then 10,000, then 100,000. So therefore, 100,000 100,000 centimeters is equal to 1 kilometer. Why is this important? It's important when we're answering this question right here for the fact that we want to know what's going to be the actual length in kilometers if the road measures 15 centimeters, because we're going to have to look at how it changes on our scale. So if 1 centimeter will give you a 50,000 centimeters, then multiplying that 50,000 times 15. So if you multiply it 50,000 times 15 instead of 1, we're going to get our answer to be equal to, because 1 centimeter give you 50,000. So you want to know what how many is going to give you if you have 15 centimeters instead of 1. So you're going to multiply 50,000 by 50,000 by 15. If you multiply 50,000 by 15, you should get your answer being 750,000. So that's gonna be your answer if you multiplied the 15 centimeters by the 50,000, right? Because instead of 1, you have 15 instead. So if you have 15 right there, it's gonna equal to 750,000. All right. So no, this is not the answer because this no is in centimeters, but we want to get it in kilometers. So in order to convert, since we know that 100,000 centimeters give you a kilometers, if we have 750 centimeters, we have to just divide. We're just gonna divide. We're just gonna divide it by. We're just gonna divide it by the 100,000 in order to convert it into kilometers. So we're just gonna divide the centimeters by 100,000, since 100,000 centimeters will give you 1 kilometers. So when dividing by a base 10 number, you're going to count the number of zeros that you see. So count the number of zeros that you see. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there are 5 zeros. It may look unnecessary to do this, but it's a very important step to make your calculation much easier, because the number of zeros tells me how I would have to move my decimal point. So that's exactly what I'm going to do right now. So but the number of zeros tell me how many times I would have to move my decimal point. And when divided, I would move my decimal point to my left. So I'm going to go to this direction right here when I'm moving my decimal point. Now, how do I move it? I start right here, because so far my decimal point is right at this location. So I am going to move it 5 times because there are 5 zeros. It makes division when we're dealing with decimal numbers much easier. So that's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So your new decimal point will come between 7 and 5. So your new decimal point will be right here. So therefore, your answer in kilometers is going to be equal to, so if you have 750, you have 750,000 centimeters, that's going to be equal to 7.5 kilometers. All right, moving on. So a car travels 240 kilometers using 20 liters of fuel. How far will it travel using 35 liters of fuel? So what you want to do, if you know how much it traveled using 20 liters of fuel, let's find out how much it would travel with just 1 liter of fuel. So how we're gonna do that, we're just gonna divide the 240 by 20, right? So if we divide 20 by 240, that should be equal to, so 240 divided by 20, that's going to be equal to, how many times 20 can go into 21 and 24, that's 1 time. We multiply afterwards, that should be 20. Subtraction will follow and come next. So we'll have 4 after subtraction, we normally bring down. So if we bring down that 0, we'll have 40. How many times 20 going to 40? That's going to be 2 times. And 2 times 20, that's going to be 40. So you end up with 0 afterwards. So that's going to be equal to 12. All right, so that means that it will travel 12 kilometers if it for 1 liter will let it travel for 12 kilometers. That's exactly what this is saying. So if it travel 12 kilometers using 1 liter of fuel, if you have 35 liter of fuel, all you have to do is just to multiply 35 by 12. And that's exactly what we're going to do in order to get our final answer. So that's going to be 35 times 12. So that's going to be equal to 2 times 5. That's going to be 10. So 2 times 5, that's going to be 10. Remember, you multiply before you add. So 2 times 3, that's going to be 6 plus 1, that's going to be 7. Remember to put your placeholder before you multiply by 1. So always put your placeholder 0. All right. And then we will continue by just multiplying by 1. So that's going to be 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 3, that's going to be 3. And then we just add. So that's going to be equal to 0 plus 0, that's going to be 0. 5 plus 7, that's going to be 12. And 3 plus 1, that's going to be 4. So your answer is going to be 420 kilometers if it used 35 liters. All right. So this right here is going to be your final answer. All right, moving down. Oh, that's it. Oh, it's right here. So a machine produces 550 bottles in 5 hours. How many bottles will it produce in 8? So we're going to do the same thing. So if it produce 150 bottles in 5 hours, let's find out how much it will produce in 1 hour. So that's going to be 150 divided by 5. So 5 divided by 15, that's going to be 3. So in 1 hour, it will give me 30 bottles. So in 1 hour. All right, so 1 hour would give me 30 bottles. That's what it means. So if I want to know how much it would give me for 8 hours, I would have to multiply that by 8. So it's the same approach as above. So 30 times 8, that's going to be 8 times 0 is 0. And then we know that we have 8 times 3. So 8 times 3 is equal to 24. So that means in 8 hours, that will give me 240 bottles. Okay.